Hello, I'm Simon Alsop, the founder and head of Barrington James Board and Executive Partners. We are a global life science specialist executive search firm. We appoint chairpeople, board members and executives to life science companies all over the globe. We have offices in the United States, Europe and Asia Pacific. Welcome to the CEO series. These are the podcasts in which we will seek to uncover the secrets of successful leadership in the life science industry. And we'll do that by talking to some of the industry's most talented and progressive leaders. And that leads me to today's guest. Welcome, Jan Thirkettle.
Thank you. Good to be talking, Simon.
Yeah. How's your summer been, Jan?
Busy. It's been a busy summer for the whole team here. People have been flat out, but also getting a few days away here and there for the team, and lucky enough to get a few days by the sea every now and then as well. But it's been a good summer.
Well, Jan, ever since you told me of your pastime of sailing the high seas, I'm always relieved to see you in one piece. So good to see you.
Always good to be back.
Great. So for those of you viewers and listeners that don't already know Jan, let me introduce him for you. Jan is the CEO of Harness Therapeutics and a board member with Epilepsy GTX. Jan has enjoyed a highly distinguished career during which he's worked at the forefront of emerging science. Unusually, he's helped to bring therapies to market across small molecules, biologics, and gene therapy categories. Highly unusual achievement. After 20 very successful years at GSK, Jan spent 6 years at the Syncona-based startup AAV gene therapy company, Freeline Therapeutics. Originally, Jan was the startup CEO and subsequently Chief Development Officer. Jan's involvement in gene therapy continues through his position on the ASGCT Regulatory Committee, and he continues to work with a number of startup companies. Today, in his full-time role, Jan is navigating the eye of the storm in the biotech industry as CEO of the exciting early-stage neurodegeneration RNA biotech, Harness Therapeutics. Jan, welcome to the CEO series.
Thanks, Simon.
So, in our quest to uncover the secrets of successful leadership, which is something of an obsession for us here at Board and Executive Partners, it's part of every brief to uncover what leaders believe in, how they act, what their experiences are. I like to go right back to the very start because I think we start learning about leadership from very early in our career. So, Jan, can you remember your first boss?
Yeah, without a doubt. So it takes me back to 1997, my first job in industry when I joined SmithKline Beecham. My first boss was a lady called Anna Stefanska. When I look back, I probably don't realize how lucky I was to have a fantastic boss as a first boss. For sure, she was somebody who's informal, great fun to work with, very passionate, but particularly very trusting and very empowering. And then when I look, that was really the most important thing. She was somebody who really trusted me to get on and do my job and to explore different things, take risks. And I think that was when I look back, was so important.
Yeah, fabulous. Listening to you, Jan, it reminds me of some of my early bosses. And one of the things that surprised me in a positive way was almost how paternal or maternal the relationship felt. I really felt like they were almost an additional parent when I was early in my career. And it was a very, as you say, empowering experience. Were there any other notable mentors early in your career, Jan?
I suppose my 20 plus years at GSK, I was lucky both to have some very good bosses, empowering bosses, but also to work. It's a complex environment. So you have a boss, you work with other senior leaders, but I work with a number of people I think would learn a huge amount from. Actually, in preparing for this, I realized actually 3 of them were all called Ian. So I don't know whether there's a link there or not, but both bosses and senior leaders in the organization I work with who, when I look at the common thing, these were people that were hugely respected, not just for the output they delivered, but actually they're particularly respected for their behaviors, the environment they created, the behaviors they expected of people. And for me, that's actually a lot about what a good leader makes it. It's integrity, people who reduced noise, simplified things, but also set very high standards about how people behaved and engaged with each other, with integrity, doing the right thing, being a good team member. And that was really the common thread, I think, across those three people who all happen to be called Ian.
Fantastic. So when did you first become a manager, Jan?
Fairly soon on, so about 2000. And I remember it being really tough, because whatever background you come from, whether you come from a technical background or commercial background or clinical background, all of your training to that point is around the content. There's very little training you get, certainly through university, as to how to be a manager, how to be a leader, how to look after, develop people. And so it was a very steep learning curve, that's for sure. But yeah, it goes back to 2000. Probably I'd only been in the industry for about 3 years at that point.
Hmm. Did you make mistakes?
Yes, and the question I think when I read was the first mistake. I suspect, I'm sure I did not. I'm not aware of my first mistake or my second mistake. I'm certainly aware of mistakes, and it was a lot to do with the tough piece about the hard piece. I think in those early years was about those tougher conversations. About it's very easy to lead highly talented people who never put a foot wrong. It's harder when you need to steer people who, and everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has their weak points. But the hard piece and the important piece about being a good manager and good leader is about being able to have those conversations and help steer people, help give feedback. And those are the things I probably found most difficult early in my career. Yeah, the harder the conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the people we've interviewed, Jan, in this series cite particularly challenging times in their career as the richest learning experiences. Are there any that you could want to?
I think the most formative experiences for me have been when things have not gone well, but also working with a good team through tough times. I guess that's probably it. So, working at a time in GSK, and I think one of my most formative and enjoyable periods was I was leading a team that was responsible for the CMC activities and what became GSK's first monoclonal. And it was a tough, long haul. It was ultimately successful, but some of the most formative experiences were where things went wrong. You try to fix it, they go wrong. And it came down to people holding their nerve and actually us convincing and having support of very senior management to hold their nerve as well. And I think that taught me a lot about resilience, that there's always a solution. There's always a solution. You've just got to keep digging. And it taught me the importance, not of just individual resilience, but resilience of a team that's got each other's back and doesn't give up and pulls together. That was, yes, I think a very, very formative experience.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you think, Jan, that over the years you've evolved, changed as a leader? And if so, how?
Definitely. So my early mid-career, my roles were very project or goal driven. So I was leading teams with a very defined goal. I was lucky to have team members who were all incredibly skilled, talented, nice people. So I benefited from the organization having developed and put those people in place, if you like. And so it was, the leadership there was very much more skewed towards goal driven and ensuring that team was effective, pulled together and achieved a goal. As I've got through my career, later in my career, my role now, my previous role was much more about actually building the organization and building those people in the first place. And that requires a lot more focus on people as people and creating the organization, creating the skill sets, creating the culture, rather than just delivering outcomes. And that's a much more of a people, requires much more focus on the individuals and people as people and on the long term rather than the short term. And that's been a very interesting and at times, challenging journey, but a really enjoyable journey.
Yeah, fabulous. And I want to move on to kind of leadership philosophy and values. And I think you've touched on some of this already, talking about the three Ians and, integrity, the right behaviors, doing the right thing. But I want to ask you, if you're building a leadership team, as you have done in recent years, is there a sort of fundamental intrinsic core value or characteristic that you would seek?
I think around individuals' integrity and leadership integrity, without that, you've got nothing. As a leader, one of the most important jobs you're trying to achieve is to create certainty in an incredibly uncertain environment. Certainty that something's going to happen. You're trying to create certainty for the team about their goals, about the culture, about expectations. And that requires trust. And none of that happens unless you have integrity, you can demonstrate integrity. So for me, that's right up there. Courage and innovation are the other two things I really look for. I think courage to take on really difficult challenges. Again, in this industry, if you really want to make a difference, you've got to be brave and do things that seem impossible.
Yeah.
And that requires, again, a real spark of innovation and ability to look at things differently. So those courage, integrity, innovation, I think are super important. Yeah.
Brilliant. I want to pick up on something you mentioned there, creating certainty for people. Has that been harder in recent times given the general uncertainty in the industry?
Yeah, without doubt. And the one of the tough things about this industry, so we're doing something that's technically hugely difficult. The science, we're building on cutting edge science, progressing cutting edge science. Um, that task requires years to get a drug to market. Even once the science is clear, it takes 10 years. So we're trying to do something very difficult over a long period of time in an environment that's often changing way more rapidly than that, and particularly thinking about the financial environment. And those swings of environment and sentiment play not just about money, but around everything. And it affects people in everyday lives. So actually creating certainty on a plan that requires 10 years of view in an environment that's flipping backwards and forwards every 5 years, that's to my mind one of the tougher things this industry has to deal with.
Yeah. You've succeeded in retaining your key people and your core team at Harness, and we're all hopeful that the milestones ahead are what everybody wants. So good luck with that, Jan. We followed the story right from day one, it seems, and you've got a great team in place there. Jan, do you think that the changing sort of societal and market conditions change the way leaders have to act?
I don't think it changed the way you have to act. I think so. For me, people, the team is at the center of everything. So my philosophy on leadership is all about team, and that's not just about. It's not about what tasks individuals do. Actually, the value add is around the bits in between, the grey space, how people interact with each other, how people's roles overlap with each other. So for me, that's the key differentiator of an amazing team versus an average team. It's the grey space and the interactions, and that requires teams who really have got each other's back and feel like a team. So it's about creating really high performing teams. That is harder in environments when there are greater pulls on people to do as individuals, greater pressures on people outside of work, more and more agendas that you have to field. And I do think individuals in life today have to manage more and more agendas, and that puts more and more pressures on people, and therefore can make it harder to build really high performing teams where people are galvanized around a single goal. I think that's probably harder than it was 20 or 30 years ago, just with the complexity in society. It's not important, not impossible. It doesn't require any different behaviors. It just means I think we have to work harder.
Yeah, fascinating. What do you consider to be the best team you've either been part of or led, Jan?
That's a tough one. I can say without a shadow of doubt, the current team we have here at Harness is a fantastic team, and I'm enjoying this hugely and enjoying working with this team. It's been a privilege to help build this team and lead it, be part of it, and I can say without doubt this has been the most enjoyable period of building and being part of a team for sure for years. I think though the most formative experience, and I say, was that team back in GSK days. Of this team where we had some really tough times over a long period. It was a very small team, just about 6 of us, and those are relationships that live forever. That's for sure. So maybe a different kind of best, if you like.
Yeah, and expectations are different. In fact, the whole context of our working and social lives are different. Questions like sustainability, diversity, etc. that's something to factor into everyday decision making. Otherwise, you get left behind. Do you feel that that's really changed the way that you and your teams lead in recent times?
Again, I don't think it changes how we lead and operate, but I think it's about it puts more things on the agenda. So there's more things that you need to consider when making a decision. And I think the guiding principle is always what is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Looking in, what are we trying to do? What's the right decision here? There are, though, more things that you have to consider now in arriving at that decision than probably there were 20 years ago. But I still think it's back to making the right decision, doing the right thing, and looking at integrity, innovation, courage, those things at the core of it.
yeah. So what I'm hearing, Jan, is there's really a core of principles, values, and behaviours that are really unchanged, whatever the context, because they are the foundation of good leadership. But then the context maybe affects the way in which decisions are articulated, let's say, or tactics.
Yeah, more precious to balance, if you like, and so I think that just makes it harder, but not different. Yeah.
Yeah. Given the recent challenges the industry's faced, Jan, do you see a change in the way pharmaceutical biotech companies are run, funded? If you look ahead 5, 10 years, do you think that companies will necessarily be different to the way they are today?
I think we're already well down a path of evolution. I think the biotech sector is way bigger than it was 30 years ago when it was hugely dominated by big pharma and with a few small upstarts that actually, the Genentechs were that really changed the environment. So I think now we're already well down that road, and I think we'll see that continue. If you go back to, there's different sorts of organizations do different things well. Big organizations do certain things well, small do others. And there are many more considerations that need to be balanced nowadays, particularly so for larger companies. And I think it is harder for larger companies to really do that bold innovation. So I think we've got an ecosystem where smaller companies, biotech, large biotech, are going to be the places where you're more likely to see real step change, bold innovation than the large pharma, but the large pharma are a better place to commercialize and scale things. And I think we'll just see that trend continue.
Yeah. Jan, I want to go back to something we mentioned in your introduction, that you've generally worked kind of at the forefront of emerging science, gene therapy, etc. If you can summarize what gives you confidence in those categories, I'd be really interested to hear.
I think it's the outcomes they can achieve. So you look at the outcomes that some of the gene therapies can achieve in the right settings. The programs that we worked on at GSK that later went to Orchard in rare monogenic disorders, absolutely life changers, life savers. I look at what CAR Ts have done. So I think it's step change. Each technology has its own sweet spot, strengths and weaknesses, but I think its ability to make massive step changes in outcomes for patients. And it's the same we've seen with some of the transformative outcomes that some of the best RNA therapies can achieve. So for me, it's all about step change outcomes for patients.
Yeah. And that's what you're driving towards with Harness, yeah, RNA neurodegeneration.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got, there's huge progress being made in monogenic disorders off the back of some of the innovative technologies. The real big prize is the larger diseases that require much more refined approaches, such as neurodegeneration. We're seeing a great stride in oncology driven by CAR Ts. Again, there's still some big prizes there that require more refined approaches. And for us, what gets us excited about is about taking a more controlled approach to be able to intervene in far more complex biology at a time when the biology is hardening up on many neurodegenerative diseases. And the ability to develop therapies that could treat and change the lives of tens of thousands of patients, hundreds of thousands of patients rather than thousands of patients, that's a really, really exciting mission. Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers, listeners will be interested to hear about the last couple of years, the tougher environment that all biotech companies have seen. You took over Harness think around 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years
That's right.
ago.
Yeah, 2021. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just summarize the journey, the challenges, and how you've managed to keep the team together and focused through a really difficult time.
Yeah, well, I joined Harness just it had been set up, put in place by the founding team, who'd taken a really bold step of and getting things moving actually off the back of COVID or during the back end of COVID, if you like. Uh, um, we then since grew the company, always really focused on strength of science, strength of RNA biology, building a focus team. And we've had to go through our own learning process of learning the strengths and weaknesses of the science, evolving based on what we learned, but actually have seen a team really consolidate through that period over the 3 years. And it's that period of a team that goes through tough times, stays together, builds a really deep strength inside of it. And that's for me very much how this organization feels of having gone through that journey of science and evolving over the 3 years, building, consolidating. And for me, that's a great place, ready for our next chapter of growing as we've now got things really starting to accelerate.
Yeah, what a brilliant answer. I think a leader who espouses those values and those beliefs would naturally breed followership and loyalty. That's great. Um, so one final question before we go into some quick fire questions, Jan.
Mm.
I just want to almost ask sort of really to clarify what underpins your leadership philosophy. And I think you've touched on this, but really how you would describe your philosophy on leadership.
Yeah, it's back to that concept of team, I think, and it's the importance of each team member has their own responsibilities, what they need to do, and that's pretty easy. The hard piece, the value add piece, is that each team member needs to understand what the others need to do, how they can support each other, how they can get the interactions best, and that's the real value add that differentiates a really great team from an average team. It's what differentiates, in my mind, leadership from project management, which itself is critical. So I'm always looking for generating those conversations and orthogonal perspectives, and then getting a team that will debate with each other, disagree with each other initially, and then agree on something and then commit to it as a team. So it's all about team.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you look for diverse styles, types in your teams?
Very much. I'm always looking for different perspectives. So that's mixing different technical backgrounds, different perspectives, different thought processes. And I'm say a big believer in the real exciting stuff happens when you mix disciplines, when you mix different perspectives, and you get
Yeah.
the crossover between those expertises, those perspectives, those styles. So for me, a strong team is a team that has different perspectives technically, different approaches, different thought processes, different styles. The key then is creating a team where people can and do challenge each other, debate, test each other, and then agree. And there's some parallels to, I suppose, to what a good family looks like as well. You've got to be able to disagree with each other, and then come together, and then set off in the same direction.
It's interesting you touch on family, Jan, because I sometimes think that there are so many parallels between a working team and a family. The relationships are intense. You spend a lot of time together. You get to know each other, but there is a prevailing sense of care in a good work team, not unlike a family. Of course, you can change your work team. You can't change your family, but
Yeah, but I think that's a good parallel, isn't it? That with the family, say there are in any extended family, there's always individuals that maybe clash, but ultimately you are a family, and there's never any debate about that or about the purpose. You find ways to disagree and go, and I think that is so important in a team and in a company. That philosophy that you cannot be in a place where you choose to disagree and not get on with people.
yeah,
That is never going to work. And in a small or medium sized company, one or two people in that position is hugely toxic. So you've got to have that way of treating it like a family where you can choose sometimes to have different perspectives on things, but ultimately you're part of the family and you're going in the same direction.
brilliant. Okay, so before we wrap up, Jan, a few quick fire questions, kind of short, sharp
Hmm.
questions for short, sharp answers. What's the best part of your job?
The variety.
Oh, good answer. What's the biggest pain?
I not actually. I struggle with this one. I think if I was something very boring, in particular in the UK for biotech, finding the right facilities at the right time. As companies grow, it's super tough. Anyway, but that's a bigger topic. But that was probably the only thing I could think of.
Okay. Is that what keeps you up at night?
Actually, nothing keeps me up at night. I'm fortunate to say at the moment.
Very good. That's good to hear. Um, can you name a leader from any walk of life or profession who you find inspiring?
I've always hugely admired Ellen MacArthur. Now, I'm a passionate sailor, and Ellen MacArthur is somebody who did incredible things in sailing. But it wasn't just because that. She was somebody who was it didn't come from background of privilege. It was a mixture of graft and determination. Someone who's actually very deliberate about finding the best people to learn from and learning from them. And that was something that struck me. And has achieved great things and has actually gone on to do some very, very worthy things and giving back with the work she does in charity as well. But integrity, determination about developing herself and coachability and giving back, those for me are great values and something that she, to my mind, absolutely espouses.
Great. What a fabulous answer. Okay, final question, Jan. If you take yourself back to Jan 10 years ago, roughly, or any executive stepping into a CEO role for the first time, what's your best bit of advice for them?
I think trusting your instinct is probably the most important thing. Trusting your instinct and doing what feels right. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, crystal clear. Jan, what a great interview.
Thank you.
As I kind of expected through working with you over the years, there's a very clear philosophy that underpins how you and your teams work. It's obvious working with your teams that integrity, doing the right thing are important. And it's always struck me there's a calmness about your leadership. And it was really interesting to be able to ask these questions and listen to you today. And I'm sure all our listeners and viewers will be fascinated too. So thank you very, very much.
Thanks for the opportunity, Simon. It's been really interesting and very interesting and humbling actually preparing for this. And it has reminded me, though, I said earlier, how much I've benefited from some of the opportunities I had early in my career from bosses, from other leaders, and those experiences have really were hugely important in what I've been able to go on and do later. So, I feel a lot of gratitude for those people that managed me, led me, were patient with me, forgiving of me early in my career. I think that for me has been an important lesson reflecting on that for sure.
Well, yeah, and let's make sure we send the link to the 3 Ians and Jesper, I think it was, and make sure they get to hear that directly. I'm sure they'll be thrilled. Jan, we wish you the best of luck with Harness Therapeutics and every venture you're involved in, and thank you again.
Thanks very much. It's been great talking, Simon. Cheers.